Deep in the forest, far from the trail, the dog was desperately digging a hole, her paws already bleeding, but she didn't stop, her eyes full of terror and determination. A few meters away, the hikers heard a muffled howl and became alert. One of the hikers, Michael, cautiously moved closer, pushing the bushes apart. What he saw made his heart sink. A tiny human hand was visible from the hole. The forest at dawn was quiet, blanketed in mist, and the air smelled of pine needles and rain-soaked soil. Molly, a scrappy, amber-eyed stray with matted fur and a limp in her back leg, moved silently through the underbrush. Her days followed a quiet rhythm: scavenge, drink, sleep, avoid people. She had learned long ago that humans could not be trusted. The pain of rogue scars around her neck had faded, but the memory lived on. Yet something about the woods had changed that morning. She paused near the edge of a trail that led to an old abandoned fire pit used by campers. Ears perked, she crouched low. A low rumble echoed through the trees as an unfamiliar vehicle crept over the gravel path, its engine barely louder than a growl. Molly slipped behind a tree, watching with narrowed eyes as the car stopped abruptly. Two men stepped out. One tall, lean, wore a black cap low over his face. The other was broader, his hands constantly adjusting his sleeves. They moved with purpose, their voices low, nervous. One of them carried a shovel. Molly didn't move. Her instincts flared. Something was wrong. The men walked a few yards into the woods, dug quickly, and lowered something wrapped in cloth into the shallow hole. Their movements were frantic, mechanical. They shoveled dirt back with force, stomping it down. Then silence. The men hurried back to the car, slammed the doors, and drove off, tires kicking up wet leaves. Molly waited until the sound of the engine disappeared completely. The forest resumed its breath. The chirping returned, and a distant woodpecker began hammering at a tree. But Molly remained still, ears tuned to something beneath the forest's normal noise. She crept toward the disturbed patch of soil. The scent hit her hard, foreign, metallic, and wrong. A low whimper, barely audible, stirred the hairs on her neck. She stepped forward and sniffed again. Then she dug. At first, her digging was careful, cautious. Her paws scraped softly, eyes darting toward the tree line. But the whimper came again, sharper this time. Something living was beneath. She dug faster, her claws tearing at the earth, ignoring the roots and rocks. Each swipe of her paws sent small clouds of dirt behind her. Her breath quickened. Soil caked her nose, dusted her fur. Then the scent changed. Something small and warm. Flesh. A whimper. Molly froze. She pressed her ear to the hole and heard it. Heartbeat. Rapid. Fragile. She resumed digging with renewed urgency. Her paws bled, claws bent, but she didn't stop. Her entire body shook with the effort. She pulled away clumps of dirt, exposing the edge of a soft blue cloth. The cloth moved. Molly let out a deep, trembling bark. One, then another. She backed away, barked louder. She turned in circles, then ran a few feet and stopped, looking toward the woods. Her eyes darted. No one. The scent of pine was heavy now, mingled with her blood and fear. She ran back to the hole and clawed at the earth again, as if to tell the buried life she hadn't given up. But the trees stayed silent. No footsteps. No voices. Molly whimpered and began to pace. She barked once more, then bolted into the forest, disappearing between the trees. Moments later, she returned, panting, and resumed digging. Her body trembled with desperation. The sun rose slowly above the pines, but the forest still held its breath. The ground fought her. Beneath Molly's paws, the soil had hardened with roots and rocks packed down by rain and time. Her claws, already worn, split and bled, but she kept digging. The whimper from beneath was fainter now. She pressed her ear to the earth and listened. Silence. Panic surged in her chest, and she howled, loud, sharp, desperate. The sound echoed into the trees, unanswered. She backed away from the hole and ran in a frantic loop, circling through the brush, then returned to the spot, tail low, panting. Again she barked, two sharp cries, then whimpered. She dug again, slower now. Her limbs trembled from exhaustion, dirt coated her fur, and her breath came in gasps. Her eyes darted between the trees, but no help came. She sprinted a few yards through the brush, ears perked, hoping for footsteps, voices, anything. But the forest remained still, indifferent. She returned, whining, nudging the half-dug earth with her nose, then flopped down beside it for a moment, panting hard, chest heaving. The smell of blood, hers and someone else's, lingered in the air. She stood again, growled at the silence, then barked with everything she had. The sound was hoarse now, barely carrying through the thick woods. She scraped at the dirt with her bleeding paws, crying low in her throat, as if pleading with the forest itself to help. Time dragged. The sun had moved behind the canopy, casting long shadows. Her strength faded. Her movements became clumsy, her balance uneven. She sat, then lay down, ears twitching weakly, eyes never leaving the disturbed ground. The forest around her pulsed with light and shadow, alive and watching. Molly closed her eyes for a moment, then forced herself up again. One more bark. One more swipe at the dirt. One more breath. The air shifted. Somewhere beyond the trees, faint voices rippled through the stillness. Footsteps crunched over twigs and dry brush. A breeze carried the smell of sunscreen and bug spray. Molly lifted her head. Her ears twitched. She stood, weak but alert, tail low, body tense. Through the underbrush, a man's voice called out, not loudly, but enough to make her freeze. She bolted. Her legs were shaky, but instinct drove her. She disappeared into the ferns, heart pounding, body aching, breath short. But she stopped after a dozen yards. Her ears swiveled. Behind her, she heard the crunch of leaves and the gentle rhythm of a child's voice asking questions. She turned her head. The forest behind her was moving slowly, steadily, toward the place she had just left. She looked ahead again, then back. The earth, the hole, the sound from below. She turned around. She stepped out, slowly at first, emerging from the shadows like a ghost. She barked once, hoarse, cracked, and backed toward the half-dug pit. The man saw her and stopped walking. The child clutched his hand. His wife whispered something, pointing toward the dirt-smeared dog with bleeding paws and wild eyes. Molly barked again. She stepped aside and nudged at the earth with her snout. The man frowned. Then he stepped closer. Michael parted the brush and walked forward, watching the dog. Her ribs were visible beneath her matted coat. She stood by the dirt mound and whimpered. He crouched and looked down. A tremor passed through his body. He reached out and began pulling away the topsoil with his hands. The child stepped forward, then gasped. A tiny hand, pale and unmoving, stuck out from the dirt. Michael shouted. His wife dropped to her knees beside him. Together, they scraped the soil away with frantic hands. The child stood frozen, eyes wide. Molly paced beside them, whining, licking their arms, her body vibrating with anxiety. More of the child's body appeared, limp, unmoving, but still warm. Michael pressed 2 fingers to the neck and felt it, faint, fluttering, but real. He let out a cry of disbelief, then looked at the dog. She met his gaze and wagged her tail once, then sank to the ground beside the baby, her nose pressed against the small hand, her eyes closing as if in prayer. Michael's hands were raw, his nails caked with dirt. He worked alongside his wife, pulling away clumps of earth, clearing it from the child's face, chest, arms. The baby was limp, his tiny chest barely moving. The woman pressed her fingers gently to his neck, her own breath halting as she felt the faintest rhythm of life. She pulled out her phone, hands shaking, and dialed emergency services, voice cracking as she gave their location. The signal was weak, but she didn't stop repeating the details until they confirmed dispatch. Michael removed his jacket and wrapped the child as gently as he could. Molly hovered nearby, pacing in tight circles, her paws painting the leaves red with her blood. The sound of sirens was distant at first, like a memory. It grew louder, real, urgent. Branches snapped, and flashing lights cut through the forest haze. First responders sprinted toward the small clearing, medical bags in hand. They took the child from Michael and began CPR, oxygen masks sealing over the dirt-smudged face. Molly stepped back, but didn't leave. Her eyes were fixed on the baby, ears twitching with every motion. Her body was tense, like she knew it wasn't over yet. 2 police officers followed behind the medics. Molly's head jerked toward the sound of tires on gravel. Her ears perked, her body stiffened. Without warning, she bolted through the brush toward the road, barking furiously. Her tail was down, her bark sharp and panicked. The officers exchanged a glance, then followed her. She reached the edge of the dirt path just as a dark SUV began to roll forward, its engine idling too long. Molly lunged, snarling, standing in its way. The driver hesitated, then tried to swerve past her. Molly chased the vehicle, barking with feral energy. The officers emerged from the woods, weapons drawn, ordering the car to stop. The SUV accelerated, tires kicking up dust. A third police car appeared, cutting them off. The vehicle screeched to a halt. Officers yanked open the doors, pulling out two adults, a man and woman, faces pale, hands shaking. In the back seat, a shovel lay across stained blankets. Molly stopped only when the officers restrained the suspects. She stood panting, her coat streaked with dried blood and dirt, her body trembling from exhaustion. One of the officers knelt beside her, gently touching her shoulder. Michael arrived seconds later, eyes wide as he saw the scene unfold. The officer nodded. They found children's toys in the trunk. And zip ties. The same logo from the tag on the infant's wrist was sewn into a patch on the woman's jacket. The suspects were arrested on the spot. Behind them, the ambulance pulled away with the baby inside. Molly sat down at the side of the road, her head low, her eyes fixed on the vanishing lights, as if only now she allowed herself to rest. The hospital room was quiet except for the steady beep of monitors. The child lay nestled in soft blankets, a small oxygen tube resting beneath his nose. Doctors and nurses moved carefully, their voices low. Outside the glass, the family who found him waited in silence. Hours passed before a nurse stepped into the hallway with a faint smile and a nod. He was breathing on his own. The child had survived. Word spread quickly, not just among the hospital staff, but beyond its walls. News outlets picked up the story, and within hours, the tale of a stray dog who saved a buried child had reached millions. Reporters swarmed the hospital parking lot. Cameras flashed, headlines rolled across TV screens. But it wasn't just the child's miraculous rescue that captured attention, it was the dog. The battered, silent shepherd mix, who now sat curled on a blanket beside the family that had followed her into the woods. Her name, someone had learned, was Molly, an old collar from a rescue years ago. She had been missing for over a year, presumed dead. But now, she was a national hero. Social media exploded with images of her dirt-covered face, her tired eyes, the soft way she rested her head against the side of the hospital cot. Guardian of the Woods, one headline read. The dog who dug up hope. As the days passed, donations poured in. Animal shelters received offers to adopt Molly from across the country. But the decision had already been made. The family who saved the child refused to let her go. They visited the hospital daily, and when the boy opened his eyes, the first thing he saw was Molly curled at his feet. He reached out a hand, small and bandaged, and touched her ear. She didn't move, just leaned closer. That moment, captured on camera, rippled through the nation like a tremor. The mayor of the town presented her with an honorary medal. A local artist painted a mural near the trail where she was found. In it, Molly stood over a patch of turned earth, her eyes watching the horizon. Months passed. The child recovered. Molly lived now in a modest house with a big backyard, shared with the very boy she had saved. She had her own bed, her own toys, but what she preferred most was lying beside him, pressed close, as if she still sensed danger lingering just beyond the trees. They went on walks together. They shared meals. At night, she lay at his door, and every time someone asked about the scar near his ribs, or the strange way he flinched at loud sounds, his mother would smile and say, "Ask Molly. She remembers it all." On the one-year anniversary, the town held a ceremony under the forest's edge. People gathered with candles and flowers, some bringing their own dogs. Molly stood calmly beside the boy as he placed a small wooden sign into the ground. It read, "To those who are never heard, but still speak. To those who are never seen, but still protect." To Molly. As the crowd applauded, she looked up toward the trees, ears perked. A wind moved through the leaves. Her tail wagged once. Then she turned and walked back to the boy, brushing her side against his knee, and lay down once more. Not as a stray, not as a survivor, but as something greater. A guardian, a friend, a memory no one would ever forget. Some stories are told in headlines. Others are whispered in the rustle of trees and remembered in the quiet loyalty of a dog who once dug through dirt to save a life. Molly never asked for a name, for a home, or for thanks. But in the end, she found all three. And somewhere, in a house not far from the woods, a boy now sleeps safely, because a forgotten dog once chose to act.